Today's guest is not even 40 yet, but it feels like he has lived multiple lives already. At 16, he dropped out of school and joined a punk collective in industrial Germany. By his 20s, he'd become the first trainee at Correktiv, Germany's premier investigative journalism hub. He exposed recycling lies in documentaries that aired on BBC and German television, chasing stories from Bulgarian scrapyards to Thailand's underground medical industry. Today, Benedikt has traded his investigative camera for an educator's microphone. As Bule Sampah, which literally translates to white trash, he reaches over 5 million Indonesians monthly through social media, teaching practical solutions to plastic pollution in a country where some children have to live on dump sites and families burn plastic waste every afternoon. But Benedikt's transformation from punk to journalist to educator reveals something deeper. Sometimes the most powerful way to expose a broken system is to help fix it from within.
Of course, you cannot avoid plastics, and you should not, right? We just have to fix our issues within this supply chain and basically within this industry.
In today's episode, Benedikt shares unbelievable stories from Indonesia's waste crisis, including what plastic has to do with tofu, and explains why he believes behavioral change is key to solving our plastic problem.
But still, I believe that we should all constantly ask or question ourselves if what we do is the right path.
Life in plastic.
Hi, Benny. Great to have you on the show today.
Hi, Joel and everybody.
Or do you prefer that I call you Bule Sampah?
Well, as long as you don't translate it to white trash, what it really means, then you're free to go.
No, then we stick with Benny. Let's jump right in because I know your time is precious. And the first question that I have for you is, you, from the outside, seem to chase extremes to some degree. And what actually gave you a bigger rush, being chased by Nazis as a teenage punk or finding that missing piece of evidence in a Bulgarian scrapyard that could expose $1 billion recycling lie?
I would say I felt my life seriously endangered being chased by neo-Nazis in Germany when I was a teenager. So I didn't feel that in doing investigative journalism on the plastic industry. Hence, we had also some critical moments or uncertainties. But to answer your question straight away, clearly a bigger rush or perhaps even more extreme is like roaming around in Bulgaria and finding a missing piece of waste in a bigger puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, there was an impressive documentary that you did there, and I don't want to go into that right now, but actually a bit more how you got there, because I read in another interview that you said the thought of this typical path of school, university, and then straight into a job kind of depressed you. How did you go from being a dropout punk to investigative journalist?
Yeah. So basically, you want to know about my about my youth.
Your dirty little secrets.
I don't have any dirty little secrets. I only know other dirty little secrets. Maybe I have some, I don't know. But I try to be quite transparent. Well, for me, it was just like I've been very good at school, and I was very motivated and engaged. But at some point, when puberty kicked in, I started to question things, everything in the end, and especially the society and economy we live in. Also in Germany. So I come from the west of Germany in a very industrial area, very working class background. And that was tough per se, I would say. And then I was like, at some point questioning why is everything seems so constructed in this capitalist world. Like I didn't see the opportunities, but I rather felt like, okay, this is like a rat race and a hamster race, and we are there to basically be educated and then work the rest of our lives. And I found that quite, demotivating. And I was really, really coming into a bit of a youth depression at some point, and then turned into a very bad school kid and very rebellic, and ultimately found or joined the punk group in my hometown.
Like
And
properly with leather jacket and metal spikes everywhere, or
in the beginning, maybe the first year not so much, but then in the end, yes, of course, mohawks and piercings and the full style.
Yeah.
And then I left school and dropped out at 16, and then already also left home. I dropped out and basically joined this punk group and full on I was into punk rock, started to like the music, started to like the vibe of anarchy, and that reflected what I felt, right? I wanted to be free, and it was also very political at that time. So anti-fascist movement and basically anti-capitalist movement and all these things, which today I really, I don't regret anything. I think I learned a lot, and also I had a great time. But of course, this is to some extent also a fascist movement, if you want, the left scene. And so today I don't share many values anymore. Hence, back then, I was into that for a while. Then again went to school in my early 20s and finished, and then to basically get back on track.
what made you go back on track?
Go back on track in terms of, I was like, I joined a secondary school to do my maturity, my Abitur, as we call it in Germany. And it was a wonderful school. We were very tiny. We only were like roughly 10 people in the class.
But why did you do that? Like, what?
I knew at some point after some years in this punk scene that this no future thing is like, of course there is a future. And I was like, well, I was also not challenged. So I wanted to be challenged again. First thought I'm going to become a social worker, and was in that class for a month or something. And then after that I was like, of course I will now do my maturity properly. And graduated. And then basically I did some internships, and I looked into marketing in the very beginning. You might know me as quite a communicative person or something. So perhaps, I was in the beginning, I thought, okay, marketing or like communications would be something I can try. But I hated this corporate world, coming from punk rock apparently, and still was to some extent attached to it. And then I was like, no, like I cannot join this like market research, like bussy people in Hamburg or something. No. And you have to know that basically my family is, I grew up with my stepdad and my mom and my step siblings. And my stepdad is a journalist as well. My mom is also into media and communications. And so, that's basically family business for us in a way. And I thought I'd try something else, but marketing didn't work for me. And then ultimately, my stepdad worked at the same newsroom in West Germany, is a big newspaper, as the founder of an investigative newsroom in Germany, which is called Correktiv. And I got introduced and was very attached. And I thought like, wow, this is something where I can still basically, be anti-capitalistic if you want, still be rebellic, still be sort of like uncover things and hold, the big, bad economy and everybody accountable. And that basically, became my career in the end.
It's quite a shift from living with punks to going into marketing to then becoming an investigative journalist. And it feels like whenever somebody pushes you almost into this cage of the establishment of saying like, this is the process, this is the path that you follow, this little rebel in you comes out. What is it about the establishment that triggers you so much?
I just felt like, generally, I believe that anything established means like settled and like conform. and basically I just realized that the majority of people can still be wrong, and that like having contrarian or opposite opinions leads to innovation and success. And that generally, I believe, I realize over and over in my life again to question everything, and to question definitely also the establishment and the people in power helps to basically change things to the better. So it's not necessarily that I'm against nowadays, like I'm not against anybody who's like money oriented, or I'm quite liberal, I would say, and I'm part of the establishment, obviously, to some extent. But still, I believe that we should all basically, constantly ask or question ourselves if what we do is the right path.
So this reflection is super important. And you mentioned you learned at Correktiv. For anyone who doesn't know that, it's, I would say, the German Champions League of investigative journalism. It's top of the class. Famous documentaries and investigations came out of that. At that time, where you were learning the basic tools of investigative journalism, what did you learn about power and how it really works?
Tough question. Power is injustice to some extent. Leadership is injustice. Personally, I don't like cheating. I don't like injustice. That was driving me in my youth all over, and that was also the reason why I thought investigative journalism is part of uncovering this. Hence, I also learned that in such a newsroom, or generally in the investigative sector, but also in the media overall, of course, there are a lot of conflicts of interest too. And I feel like, then a lot more needs to be discussed about the role that we as journalists should have, and not to become activists. Hence, the majority of investigations we did in the beginning, though, were, I would say, independent, and basically uncovered some scoops. And what I also learned is that the majority of basically scandals are not the secret things that need to be uncovered. Is not the big conspiracy or something, or leak where it needs a whistleblower to break the silence. But I learned that the power abuse and the things that are actually scoops are happening in front of everybody's eyes. The majority of things that are grievances in society and that are go wrong, we all know about them to some extent. We might not know the full picture. That's why we need investigations. But generally, we already know. It's happening in front of everybody's eyes, and that's what I learned there. Plus, last but not least, I have to say, it's a tough time. To the outside, everything's, let's say, everybody wants to be or appears quite like colleagues, or, it's quite like in the journalist scene, a lot of individuals that pretend to be very helpful with each other or something. But still, a lot of people are very career-oriented in that sector too. And I feel like that also leads to a lot of biased reporting.
No. Yeah, in the end, it's a big responsibility, right? With these investigations, you typically also get a massive platform, and what you say or don't say there can have a massive impact on people's lives that are on an investigation. Would you say, after doing a lot of that people are generally, or that these people that you investigated do things really on purpose, or is it that things in reality also sometimes just happen without people knowing, and then somebody comes in and uncovers it and chasing the big story and getting money, getting the clicks?
Well, there is the saying in German, Wahrheit gibt es nur zu zweien, like the truth there's always two parts of the truth, right? reality and truth is very complex. I feel like, well, most people that are somehow stuck in something that's going wrong, might it be the single-use plastic industry, or if you want, we might come to that later. I feel like most people are not on purpose doing anything wrong. They're just stuck in a system. Hence, of course, there are also individuals that take advantage, that can be exposed. And we as the media always come in and basically come through a specific lens into it, and also have to basically ensure that a red track in a story and that everything unfolds like as a real scoop or something. And yeah, on that way, I'm not sure if full reporting is always adequate. That's why I believe that the power of social media and citizen reporting is that there you have all the nuances and the different opinions and the different parts of the truth. And that's why this conventional reporting into one feature story or one documentary is always narrowed down. And if you really, really look into it in detail, it's to some extent everything is falling apart at some point. And that's basically for me one of the reasons why I wanted more independency in my career. I wanted to do something really innovative and just independent while doing good, and not being not being basically depending on any editor or any other newsroom or anybody, coming in with some sort of like impression of how your investigation or how your reporting should turn out,
No. I find that entire piece so interesting, because I think that journalism, especially when we talk about the environment, is so crucially important, because it is one of those instruments that holds everybody accountable, right? And this narrative, capitalism destroys nature, is very predominant in society to some degree. And then obviously uncovering these things when things really go wrong is important. So I'm very happy that these independent people exist. And you've been drawn to these crude characters quite a bit in your own work, right? The documentaries on doctors in Thailand, sex reassignment industry, Germany's tire mafia, the underworld of waste. What is it that drew you to these crazy stories? And then particularly, you found that environmental angle. Why was it so important to you?
First of all, to bring it right in line, I would say after my traineeship, I was very early at Correktiv. The guy who founded Correktiv, David, I still, thanks to him, he taught me a lot, and he brought me to Berlin in the end. And from that West German newsroom, or basically newspaper, he then founded Correktiv. I became the trainee more than like 12 years ago or what. And after this traineeship, I immediately became independent. But still, as an independent reporter, you depend on newsrooms and on your clients and everything. And you're just like same as if you would be hired by a newsroom in the end, more or less. So I followed 3, I would say, tracks of what I did, which is I wanted to become international. That's why I already started to travel as a backpacker. But meanwhile, I did my feature stories. I love creative writing. I come from writing in the end, like research, investigation, and then writing it down. And that's how I came across in Asia already back then, 8 years ago, 2016, 17. I came across really interesting people and characters that I found worth feature stories. And indeed, some of them were printed in national media in Germany, and even beyond. And then at the same time, I was starting to work for video production companies in Berlin, contribute with my investigation or research skills, supporting some larger productions with this. And so I also got into film. And lastly, I was also sometimes hired by newsrooms or NGOs just to contribute with investigation. So I had these 3 tasks, and they made me I had sufficient funds and made good income from this. I could travel. I really enjoyed my time. And I got already back then also into environmental reporting and into the plastic industry, especially when you go to Asia and see all the pollution issue. That was something that was stuck with me. And then time by time I got into some investigations about lobbyism on the European Union. And I didn't really come through an environmental angle on it. I also wouldn't consider myself an environmentalist, by the way. So, nor an activist. I'm still reporting. My mission is give access to information for people and do something good with it. I still feel like basically journalistic motivation is predominant for what I do. And I'm very political, and it's very a political and economic sphere that I was focusing on, and not so much the environment. But of course, ultimately, the environmental damage is the issue. So that's why it's related. And I came into, while I was traveling and doing fun stories and everything, I did an investigation on lobbyism on the Single-Use Plastics Directive in the EU, deposit systems and these kind of things. Looked into greenwash, found out first, cradle to cradle, for example, was falling apart on one side. If you look at it, I did a story about that, had a tiny clinch with the founder of Cradle to Cradle back then, Professor Braungart, and these kind of things happened before Corona for a few years. And then I understood more and more and came into the cement industry in the end, burning all the waste, got some grants to investigate this. And so, basically, just so you understand basically where I'm coming from. And in the end, to answer your question straight away, it's mostly about environment and health that are damaged. But I didn't come through that angle, I came from another side. And mostly about consumer misleading, lobbyism, and these kind of things were more interesting to me.
Did you ever think about if maybe still it's the establishment that you're trying to bring down, that you see as an enemy, where you think, like, I don't know, this is all in such structures, maybe destructive structures even. Is there still a little punk in you that is trying to break things apart?
Yeah, well, I still believe that, and we all know it. Maybe your audience, I believe many people from the industry will also listen to us. Of course, we know, right? We are still living in to some extent a hoax of circularity. If you really look at things in detail, we are still in this linear things, and all the numbers that everybody here and there is throwing around, I don't know if much changed. And to be honest, it needs somebody to still hold others accountable, or we still need to talk about it. We shouldn't forget. So I don't want to break anything or da-da-da. As I said, I also believe like big brands or something, they are like to some extent stuck in this system. It also needs consumer. I clearly understand it's also consumers' responsibility. Fact is, we should not, blame the consumer or something. No, like consumers, of course, they are responsible for, like how can big companies move if consumers don't demand, right?
No.
And, but on the other hand, of course, those, people working in big corporations and everything, they still take responsibility, and they have to be honest and reliable. And there is also some shit happening still. Yeah. So, yes, I want to, I'm not shy to basically, put my finger out and
I'm very happy that you do that. And that brings me also to the next question, which is quite an open question. And we talked a little bit about incentives, right? And there's always money coming from someone, and that typically also sets the incentive. And you can tell a story through crazy different angles. I'm not sure if it's a good question. I'm still going to ask it. What do you think is the value of truth today in the environmental movement? And is there even truth? Because everything seems to be so politicized.
Yeah, true. Well, if you're talking about the independence of all stakeholders, then yeah, I don't know if, apart from a few grassroots movements, I think everything is very, very instrumentalized and everybody has an agenda in this sector. And yeah, that's what I also experience. So some people still follow the right thing and they probably identify with it. And I think to some extent it's also true. But as I said, truth always comes with various, aspects and perspectives. And there's not this one truth. Many things nowadays are true at the same time. And so what everybody's doing is trying to claim that they are the ones on the right track and they know what is the truth. And I think that's where all the mayhem begins that we face today. Not only in the environmental sector, but generally in society. That's the issue, right? Every party, every group claims that what they believe is the right thing and the other one is ultimately wrong. And I think this polarization is the opposite of going towards truth, right? Because if we should value truth, that means that it's a democratic process, right? You have to negotiate that and basically find the right arguments for it and see and question. It's like research, see if it's actually true or not, falsify and all these things. But nowadays, yeah, people are overloaded with information, overloaded with stimuli, and we are living in an absolute revolution, which is the digitalization. Is very difficult for all of us to cope with all the new things that constantly change, even in days. And so truth in general is now as diverse as the universe.
That's true. And everything is also to some degree so paradoxical, right? There's people that passionately hate plastic, and at the same time, they voice that message to their smartphone, which contains non-recyclable plastic. Probably if you open the fridge, there's going to be plastic in there. And that's then always where there's so much tension in my eyes, and where it takes conversations and debate and how to progress. And I think that's also the perfect segue into the next part of our interview, which I want to focus more on your work that you're doing now in Indonesia. But maybe you can explain that shift from successful journalist in Germany, and then you backpacked through Indonesia, you fell in love with someone in Indonesia, and did you also fall in love with Indonesia itself?
That's very good questions. First of all, I want to quickly revert to what you said about people basically saying that they hate plastic or something. Yeah, careful, right? I might have also been a useful idiot in the past to some extent, and I think many people still are. There is no way you can hate plastics. Plastics are the tool of our time. We all use them every day. It's clearly the age of plastics. They make our life cheaper, easier, but at the same time, we have this problem child of the industry, which is the single-use item and single-use products that we need to basically work on. But generally, that's again the problem, right? Like saying like, I hate plastics and a world without plastics would be the solution is absolutely not the truth, and can be part of the truth or is partly truthful, but like you have to face the reality. And the reality is, as you say, I find that so ridiculous and it's so paradox. Of course, you cannot basically avoid plastics, and you should not, right? We just have to fix our issues within this supply chain and basically within this industry. And I hope we will. And for me personally, okay, what happened, right? I came to Indonesia. Indeed, I also met my wife here very early. We already, since I came here the first time, we already together since then, basically, more or less. And yeah, and I saw these mountains of waste, and I find it quite shocking that basically we as stakeholders, like the industry, but also reporters or everything, like we mostly focus on target audience, which is not really affected. And like there is nobody strategically basically giving access or trying to empower the people that should actually know and that live in much worse conditions. And that was basically motivating me to also change. I had different push and pull factors. I was like, I was not happy with the media or basically the sector I work in Europe or Germany. And at the same time, I felt like, wow, there's like so much to do on that end. And yeah, I was starting to get more used to society here and started to learn the language a bit and understand things better. I don't know if I want to say I fell in love with Indonesia. I think it's a great country, but it's not my favorite country. Other countries are also great. And that's also not the point. Like, I really, really enjoy being here and I love the people. But at the same time, it's also very challenging, of course. It's a big, big roller coaster ride. And I have faced difficulties in my work life I've never experienced before. And so it's very challenging. Hence, I went down that way. And and basically, we had a larger TV documentary. It's called The Recycling Myth. That was the Bulgarian moment, among others, that you mentioned in the beginning. It's an undercover and investigative piece on illegal waste trade, etc., including shooting in Indonesia. And that was the time for me. I was like, okay, either I go on with another larger production like this, or, and that was what my wife said, why not we do the same? It's the same thing, right? We do content, or we produce. We report, we produce, but let's do it for Indonesians on social media. And that was the 2022, I would say 3 years ago. That was the time that we started to, for fun, wherever we went, start to do content about waste, fill the pipeline a bit, made a tiny concept. We called it Bule Sampah, like white trash. So Bule is the Indonesian word for foreigner, and there's already content creators like Bule Toxic or Bule Barbie or something. And I was like, perfect. And we just tap in here and call it Bule Sampah. And it's ironic to Indonesians because it means that white people are trash, kind of. And so it's sticky, and people are like, huh? Okay. And then they're already in the content. And yeah, of course, in the beginning, people were laughing at me because I knew a few Indonesians from the recycling industry and others, and they were like, this is, nobody cares, And I thought, wait.
Is that true? Like, if you go into these communities, right, if people check out your social media and there's waste burning left and right and so much plastic, unimaginable, do people in these communities care? Do they think it's a problem?
They know, and they do. So, okay, let's say, I would put it this way. Actually, they know, but they got used to it, right? And
It's the baseline now. Yeah.
So they of course, we're humans. Like, of course, it's technically, it hurts, right? It's like, it hurts to see the environment like this. And of course, people know that if they burn waste, it's toxic. They can feel it. You don't need to be well educated to realize that this can be an issue, and hence people just get used to it and they become apathetic. They don't know what's the way out here, and so they stop questioning it. They just take it, and it's not the only problem they have. They might focus on making an income in a day and stuff like that. So it's not a priority either, and that's where we at. And so I would say a basic, there is awareness, but it needs to be brought back onto people's radar and table. That's what we do. And then we show them the solutions, or we try to at least communicate what solutions are out there and how can we get there. Because obviously people ask me every day, okay, I separate my waste now, but there is no waste truck coming to pick up the plastics.
No.
Yeah. Then my role is to basically communicate, okay, what can you do now? Okay, how can you prevent parts of that waste? Or do you have an informal sector? Do you have waste pickers around you? You might connect to them. So I'm trying to basically connect the dots for people and bring in, highlight the whole situation.
Maybe we need to take one step back, because I think when people in my part of the world, Germany, Central Europe, United States, think of Indonesia, if they come from the surf industry, they think of the beautiful waves in Bali, Lombok, Mentawais. If they come from the yoga industry, they think of beautiful rice fields and everything's clean. Bali is paradise. What do you see on your trips when you leave these tourism centers? And how much of what we think Indonesia is actually true?
Yeah, nothing is true. What basically people that just come there for a holiday, or even people that stay in Bali over a longer time, know very little, in my opinion, about the overall country and the society for several reasons. First of all, Bali specifically, because it's completely different than the other regions, because it's Hindu, and so it's the only Hindu island, and we have 17,000 islands here, of which most of them are even populated, and it's 280 million people. Bali has 4 million. So Indonesia is crazy diverse. It has thousands of local languages here, and ranges from Malay communities in Sumatra to Papua, and is almost Australia. So it's massive. And so, Bali is just a tiny spot, and the beautiful spots are also very rare here, because I would say if you go out, then you will see that many places are already polluted, not only by waste and plastics, of course also organic waste, by the way, we should never forget about, but also because it's industrialized a lot, and or industrial farming is happening. And so I would say, and it's still quite a country in development status. In many areas are still, let's say, need to be developed in terms of infrastructure, but also education. And that's basically what I see then. Plus, for our topic about waste management, it's just the lowest level you can imagine. We are still there. We are still from household collection, if ever, by a truck, no catalysator, or maybe there, usually by a truck. That so what's happening here is like household collection to a dump site, and that didn't change much.
Let's double click on that a bit, because for people here, right, if I go out on a Sunday morning into the park, walk my dog, the pollution that I see is litter in the park that people left after having a drink. What does plastic pollution look like in a remote island in Indonesia?
Well, then it's not only people littering because they are lazy or they got drunk in the park, but then it's just structural littering, I would say. So people dumping waste on roadsides, people dumping waste in the jungle, or like they have basically pollution hotspots. For example, people go from village to village, and then on the highway they dump, or they have an informal dump site or even an illegal dump site. So basically they need to get rid of their waste. That's number one. Number two, and that's the elephant in the room, people burning waste. So jam sore jam bakar, meaning like the afternoon hour is the burning time here. So then basically these villages go up in fire in the end. And that is colonial heritage, because the Dutchies started to introduce that waste burning, mostly obviously agricultural waste back then, or organics. The people were supposed to burn that. Yeah, and now they mix it with plastics. And so that's, in my opinion, even the worst thing that we need to focus on. And that's what you experience all over Indonesia every afternoon, that these people burn their waste.
Under the open sky.
Yeah,
and these
in the sky.
These images that you sometimes see of these hyper polluted beaches, are these prepped for Instagram, or do they exist?
They do exist, and they exist not only in Bali. That's another bias, right? So the biggest cleanup groups and the most attention is on Bali. That's what I wanted to say. Like there are a lot of spots that are not even basically uncovered yet in here, where basically waste is accumulating. So no, that's reality. And in my opinion, I see more pollution on land. I mean, like, for me, like, these massive dump sites and even the overflowing TPRs and then all that burn is even more, for me, I relate more to that. I think the whole ocean plastic narrative and all this, it's real, but it's actually not what we should prioritize or talk about. Of course, it's good to focus on it, don't get me wrong. We need to try to prevent this and partly clean it up and save the ecosystem. But I mean, I don't know. I don't want to know the casualty number in Indonesia due to waste burning, right? So how many people already died because they burn waste every afternoon? So
what is the problem with it?
the problem is simple. People consume basically fast-moving consumer goods coming in multi-layer packaging, flexibles. I would say rigids. The collection rate is relatively high. We already see big competition. Big companies are here, state-of-the-art factories. That's good. But of course, the flexibles and the low-value plastics are the issue. And people don't know the alternative to it, or they know it, and the infrastructure is not there, or the economy is not right behind it, and all these things. And so the show goes on, and that's where we're trying to start, right? So in my opinion, it needs much more consumer behavior change campaigning, should be a priority. I see all the startups, innovation, everything goes into basically recycling in the end. But as we all know, recycling is quite low on the waste hierarchy, and it starts with consumers. Waste management starts with consumption, obviously, and not with managing waste. And I think this has to be fixed.
No. And before we go into the things that should give us a bit more hope, I want to double click a bit on the pain again. Can you tell me about some of the worst things that you've seen? I remember this story about something related to tofu, for example. Is that number one? Maybe you can tell me your top three.
Yeah, okay. We already had a bigger... it's not a scoop, because, again, the real scandals happen in front of everybody's eyes. The fact that Indonesian tofu factories burn plastic waste to steam tofu as an alternative fuel, apparently, to steam, to isolate the smoke, basically, or the heat, and steam tofu, but also they use it simply as a fuel for a wok instead of wood pellets or something. And so I knew about this already for a while, and now we published it this year, and it became viral. There was also a New Zealand journalist having a larger YouTube video on it, and so that was a big buzz a few months ago. Even the New York Times reported about it. And yes, to answer your question, it's quite bad. But we already had some impact. I went to a mall recently, and the staff in the restaurant recognized me and thanked me for that video, because they said they would now pay more focus on their supply chain and track down. These are things that are driving me, you know.
Yeah.
Apart from the many Indonesians, thank you guys. If you're from Indonesia and listen, apart from the many people that find our reporting quite useful and are just happy and proud that we do it. And yeah, I would say in our saturated Western society, I didn't get so much support. So people are really supportive, and that drives us. Let's continue to do it together. So this tofu thing is really, really bad. I have the image of a lady. She's collecting motor oil, and she is like taking the oil and like out of the sweatshop where they fix the bikes, and she's just basically throwing the oil right onto a tree. So that's why I think circular economy and what we are doing, we're now talking about plastics, but we need to cover, of course, many, many more things, ranging from organics, textiles, then also coming into construction waste, tire. How do I handle even motor oil or cooking oil? these kind of things. And then generally, I feel like every time I see children involved in this, that's quite tough. I would say we also have to distinguish. It's not necessarily, in my opinion, bad if like kids after school support their parents by either doing, home cooking for their shop, street food shop, or might be even they help to collect bottles. But of course, if you see kids living in a dump site or on top of the dump site, that's just like, painful.
No.
So
there was anyway one of the things that I wondered about, right? You put yourself into these extreme conditions that are also bad for your personal health, which could be a whole nother conversation. But did your emotional response to that change over time? Do you feel like your baseline is adjusting to your everyday reality, or do you still feel the same things when you see that? And what do you feel when you see that?
Yeah, no, the human being gets used to everything, right? And so I realized that when I bring people there that haven't seen it or something, and then I realized, oh my God, I'm so deep down the rabbit hole. I miss the smell even sometimes now of a waste of a dump site. It's like, I don't, or not, I miss it, but when I'm back, I'm like, oh yeah, that's where
Feels like home.
Yes, welcome back.
Reminds you of your punk apartment.
Yeah, kind of like white trash, right? And that's us. Well, of course, I get used to this. I'm really, really like dirty, disgusting, dangerous. We are working in the 3D, 3 dimensions here, and dirty, disgusting, also dangerous. I don't care anymore. And it's good you bring it back to attention because I'm now end of my 30s. I would say we mostly take care. I mostly do wear masks, sanitation. So we have a bit of a standard operating procedure to produce out there in these fields. Hence, I sometimes felt like when you've been to a landfill a lot and you inhale a lot of there's a lot of ammonia in the air or methane and stuff, and it's quite acidic, and I could feel that in my. So I could feel affected, or like my feet hurt, with some pain that I never discovered before. There's something wrong. And last year, my stepdad passed away from cancer and was very unpredicted and very tough. And since then, I'm pretty much like, okay, I cannot do this all my life. I might have to at some point go back to desk.
Yeah. Thank you for your service, if I could say that. And this is what I what I want to focus on now. Is like, why do you do all that? What is Bule Sampa doing? How do you help that situation?
Yeah, what we do is basically we and that's why everybody's watching. We are the megaphone of this circular economy, if it's ever there, or I would say of different stakeholders to the supply chain of single-use plastics, ranging from FMCGs over obviously the waste management sector here, and the startups related to it are our partners, friends, and clients. And we just spotlight basically where Indonesia is at and where Indonesia could go in preventing and reusing, but of course also recycling waste. I've always been very critical with the recycling industry because the term itself is misleading if you just isolate it and use it for marketing. That was always the point of my reporting, especially also with this bigger documentary. But of course, we need the recycling industry, and it needs to be scaled up. And so on this big transition, Bule Sampa is there and is holding a microphone to everybody out there in the field. And we basically get to know where Indonesia is at. That's pretty much it.
What's your reach by now? How many people do you reach with your content?
Good question, because these platforms constantly change their algorithms and everything. So it's a bit coming in waves. but we do always reach more than 5 million people on Instagram every month. 320,000 followers, average, I would say 5 million accounts reached every month. And then we have 2 TikTok accounts. I don't know what's wrong with TikTok. Sometimes it's like difficult to surf that platform. It seems like, I don't know. I cannot judge, but some other content creators face the same thing. It's difficult to hit the algorithm. So, and then we have also YouTube. Plus, we also have accounts for the foundation that I founded here. And also we try to improve on LinkedIn, but that's not our main goal. We don't do B2B much. We are really, really there to communicate the needs of this industry, and everybody is working to fix the problem. We communicate this to society.
And what are some of the main lessons that you're trying to bring across to your followers? Where's hope? Like, what do people need to know that things get better?
Yeah, things will change here. So people need to also be patient. And it's good if they start to seek solutions and start to just be aware and make tiny steps. So I'm always saying, like, zero waste is also misleading. Like, nobody can be zero waste. It's a bullshit term. Like, we want 10 people to be 10% less wasteful. That is much better than having one person like being 80% less wasteful, something like that. So it's basically, I'm trying to bring in the right framework, and the lesson learned is that keeping people, just giving them tiny things to do. Okay, so like the next thing is just isolate your PET bottles and give it to the person in your village that is collecting those bottles. That's better than dumping them down the river or putting them in the general waste, and then they have to mine it at the landfill. It becomes Grade C. So yeah, these are tiny things we're trying to fix. And the lesson learned is that people are actually quite easy to mobilize. So it's actually people are thirsty to know the solutions, and if there is an incentive, for example, also especially here in Indonesia, many things are based on little money. So yeah, if people realize that there's also entrepreneurship, or like there are opportunities for them, waste becomes a value if you treat it correctly and stuff to some extent, then this is basically a good chance for all of us. And that's my lesson learned here.
So there's no silver bullet?
No, there's no silver bullet, but I think we're moving slightly towards the right direction. I think still a lot needs to be done, but I think it will come also with more economic development across the ASEAN region, in countries, and then also sustainability, green competition, all that will also here at some point, I believe, will play a role. Also, China will play a role in this context. They're very pragmatic, and so I think. And then last but not least, of course, extended producer responsibility and the right framework, once really established and enforced, then I think there is an opportunity, or there will be a way that more waste gets managed here. Hence, the big issue is the prevention. So, these ingrained habits of consumption are the ultimate thing to fix. That's why I hope I get more competition for what I'm doing.
To help you help other people prevent more waste. And I think there's so much in that resonates with me, because if we bring it back to the European discussion, right, one of the first things that media here almost has as an allergic reaction to anyone that is trying to bring a solution is they say, it's like, well, but that's not the solution. No, but it is part of the wider conversation, of the wider thing, right? There is no one solution to such a systemic issue. And that's, I think, super important to realize. And it's crazy how big of a platform you've built that allows you to change people's behavior. And how is it for you from moving from the sidelines of basically looking at others working in the space and exposing also to the world of what's going wrong, to now having your own machine in the waste management, or in the, how do we even call that? Let's say in the plastic industry.
Yeah.
Did that change your perspective on things? Would you still do the documentaries in the way you did them in the past, or?
Yeah, I did. I also had in the last couple of years, since I especially do this platform, and I also get to know more people directly from the industry, including from brands, from, I work my chairman, my co-founder, he owns recycling companies here in Indonesia. And that's the benchmark, because he's doing low value plastics in remote areas, and I'm trying to also advise and so basically, yeah, I would say I'm now not so much independent reporter, but really became part of that industry, and that's the right thing to do, because I think my personal journey is, I don't want to destroy the establishment anymore. I feel like it is much more, it's probably more effective if we start to understand each other and work together on fixing this. And yeah, and I appreciate to basically be able to be invited and sometimes sit down with stakeholders at round tables and directly communicate this, and also sometimes even criticize and see what opportunities we have together. It's much better than coming from the outside and finding this one scoop that needs to be uncovered, but in the end doesn't really change anything, like, that's why I think, yeah, I'm happy to be here now. And last but not least, yeah. Huh?
Me too.
Yeah, and I think that the recycling industry here is still dirty and still in the baby shoes to some extent, if it's not the big PET thing. And that's what we need to bring on to the next level. And that's where I'm working at. And and there we need more, not only Bule Sampa, should be 10 Bule Sampas who basically bring more attention to all this.
Yeah. Before we jump into the rapid fire, there's one last question. You mentioned that example of tofu, right? And then you went into the restaurant and people told you that they changed their purchasing behavior. Can you tell more of these concrete stories where things changed? Because these are beautiful to me. This gives me hope that we're moving in the right direction. What else is successful for Bule Sampa?
For me, it's a success, as I said, if so we measure our impact also, first of all. So I know we survey people on social media. We have a questionnaire on our profile in the link tree and stuff like that. I also have an educative app called Sampap that we also do pre-post test. We do survey, we do focus group discussions. We follow a whole methodology, and I can we will later, by the end of the year, also have a first report about this, and we'll come up with, it's difficult to measure the exact metrics or exact numbers here, how much waste was prevented. I just developed a waste footprint calculator, so people at least can do it in the app for themselves, like a waste diary and stuff like that. But yeah, so I just want to say there's not only this like super nice story where the impact somebody tells you, but I need to understand it systemically and the impact that we have, and then make it available for our partners, for CSR partners, for example, same as a plastic credit makes collected numbers available.
No.
But personally, I can just tell you, yeah, of course, this moment, I don't know, yesterday I took the lift here in Jakarta in my where I live, and the lift opens and one woman stands in there. It's like, oh my God, Bule Sampa, what are you doing here? I'm living here. Yeah, I'm a guest here. Okay. And then she's like, oh, you changed my life and stuff like this. And it's so important that you report and I don't know which impact our reporting really has on her, but obviously some, and they tell their families and friends. And in the end, hopefully it leads to the fact that people at least, for example, stop littering. But
and I think isn't that beautiful to be known or almost famous for that, and not for, I don't know what else there's out there that people get famous for, but I think that's beautiful.
It's good. I really enjoy it, but we need so it needs to be all integrated, right? So we need to set up the right infrastructure here, and so then people will be very responsive to the solution. So if really they see that the truck, for example, that the plastics collected, separately collected and then being managed, and that all this makes sense and might even reduce the waste fee they have to pay as a tax and stuff like this, or they make money out of it. If the infrastructure together with behavior change campaigning is there, then I think the system shift, it will accelerate. And this is, I think, what we are still lacking. We still don't have a mandatory finance system here in place. And apart from a few startups such as yours or other initiatives that come up with smart solutions, we need to see this widespread infrastructure and or let's say rules and regulation and the enforcement, and then the visible infrastructure available. And then it will be much more easy for us to connect households to this and mobilize them.
No. It feels like it's possible, and that's the beauty of it. And I know you have to run, but there's one question that I ask everyone on the show. You get to have dinner with a marine animal. You don't have the animal for dinner, but you sit down with a marine animal, you speak the language. Which one would you choose and why?
I think I choose a dolphin because I think they are incredibly close to us somehow. And I think they know, they probably know all they travel far and they're quite sensitive. They know a lot, and they probably can tell us what's happening in the ocean and how it feels for everybody out there, what we are doing when the ship engines come and when the fishing nets are like harming other animals, and the dolphins can observe this. I think I choose a dolphin. I had great experiences with them in Australia when surfing, and they come so close and they seem to enjoy things and they somehow communicate. It's an amazing animal. So I take.
Would be a fun evening. Perfect. And then really 2 questions. You get to write a story that is featured in every major newspaper in the world. What is it about?
Well, it should be a positive story. Perhaps, okay, I think it would be a story, let's say a breakthrough of the FMCGs, that they go for pooled packaging systems, perhaps polypropylene in a refill system in order to phase out single-use plastics, and that this has basically been developed behind closed doors without that it needs any UN plastics treaty or any WEF negotiations or anything. That's just coming up, and then I have the news exclusively in report.
Perfect. I would buy every newspaper and plaster them on the wall. And then lastly, what's something rural Indonesia taught you that nobody in Duisburg was able to teach you?
I think Germany and Duisburg already, so where I'm coming from, already teach me to be awake and alert about the environment. But here in Indonesia, you really, really have to, people they're friendly and I love Indonesians, but they can also take advantage and have their own agenda. And you have to be sometimes careful here.
No, right. Perfect. Feels like this is not the last time we spoke. Thank you so much for your time today. And I'm so grateful for the work you do. And all the best to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Good luck for the podcast, and see you later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Life in plastic.